What's up, guys? ArtistVersion1 here, and welcome back to another edition of Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And if you don't know by now, well, this is all based on a little book that I wrote and in my failed attempt to write a follow-up. I take those stories that I would eventually write for a second book, or failed to write for a second book, and some stories that I've previously written, and put them into podcast form. And that's what I do here on Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And sometimes, well, very rarely, I should say, bring on some guests, and they tell the stories that you didn't ask for as well. And tonight I got a good one here, or some good ones, I should say. There's not really a complete narrative, but a bunch of different stories to talk about at one singular place. I'm rambling already. But before we get to those stories, we got to give a great shout out to the people over at MoviesRUSA.biz. If you don't know what MoviesRUSA.biz is, it's a great website where you can head on over and find those hard to find TV shows, those hard to find movies that have either never been released on Blu-ray or physical media before, or haven't been released on Blu-ray or physical media in quite a long time, and they will put those on Blu-ray or DVD by special request for a great, reasonable price. And if you're looking at those prices and you're like, hey, that's not great and reasonable enough for me, well, use my checkout code, that being ARTIST, ARTIST, at checkout, and save not 10, 20, 30, or 40% on your checkout. You're going to save 50, 5, 0, half off on your entire purchase, not just one item, your entire purchase. You put 50 items in there, you're going to get 50% off of each item. And on top of all that, if that's not good enough right there, you're going to get free first class shipping as well. And for the very few international listeners that we have, if you're listening to this, you're like, hey, I want some of that goodness too. You can, and you're also going to get free first class international shipping as well. It doesn't get much better than that. Over 3,500 titles to choose from, everything from movies to from streaming services, from TV shows that haven't been on Blu-ray or DVD ever. All that and more. Head on over to moviesrusa.biz, and if you head on over there and you see nothing you like, just email him, say, hey, I'm looking for this. He can try and find it for you, put it on disc for a reasonable price, and yeah, and you can still use that checkout code, get your free shipping, get your 50% off, all that good stuff. So, all right, so what I want to talk about tonight here is probably one, I wouldn't say one of the worst experiences of my life, but because the place in question, you know, I had a lot of good from it, you know, but the bad outweigh the good. And for those of you who don't know, I went to two different high schools. I went to one in North Carolina for 2 years, and then I went to another one when I moved to Houston, Texas, for another 2 years. And that's what I mainly want to talk about is this school that I went to in Houston because I guess culture shock would probably be the best way to describe it because when I got there, it was a real culture shock type of thing. You know, like, you know, North Carolina school was like laid back. My whole school was 700 people. You know, when I got to Texas, my class was 700 people. You know, the whole school was like 2,500 kids, you know? And I just want to talk about some of the experiences that I've had there. And FYI, I am simulcasting this on YouTube. So some people are watching a live recording of this as I'm recording it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about the very beginning right there. Let's talk about the transfer. The transferring of my my record there. For some reason, even something as simple as that was a fucking headache. I thought it was just as simple as like they call the school, I give them my information, they send my shit over, and we're done. No, apparently it was a whole ordeal because my first day, I go in there and they're like, okay, this is a new student, da da da. And they're like, okay, well, we don't have his transfer yet. So, you know, just go sit out there and we'll wait. So I'm sitting out there, I'm waiting. 2 hours go by. And finally they come to me and they're like, well, we can't get your transfer today. You can go home. Wow. Okay. So finally the next day they get my transfer. Okay. And I look at the transfer and it's like, apparently I took all honors classes in North Carolina. I'm going to tell you fuckers right now. I never took one single fucking honors class. Not a single fucking one. So I don't know how this transcript from North Carolina to Texas got all my fucking transfer classes wrong. You know, it's saying I took French 1 and 2 honors. It's saying I took, Algebra 1 and 2 honors. Like all this shit, right? So they're using that transfer as like a baseline to what classes to put me in. So I'm sitting with what they call what was it, ESM or something? Basically a glorified fucking counselor, because there's so many fucking kids at this school. You know, you can't have one fucking person running everything. You know, so I was sitting with mine, and I'm not gonna name them because they're a piece of shit. So whatever. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we're sitting there, we're trying to figure out my classes. They're like, well, what do you like to do? I was like, well, I really like drama. You know, I took drama in North Carolina. I really like that. I really like to take it here. And they said, okay, so we go down to I mentioned this in the I Want to Be a Star episode, but I go down to the drama room and they figure out where to place me and everything. That one I didn't mind being placed in Drama 3 Advanced because, like, I knew I was advanced in that. It was the one class I, like, fucking, I'm like, okay, you put me in advanced, I can roll with that, you know? So, now at this point, I didn't know that all my classes said honors. You know, I just knew that they got the transfer. I didn't know this until later, you know? So they're like, okay, so what else do you like? And I'm like, beats me. You know? So they're like, all right, what about desktop publishing? I'm like, what's that? They're like, you basically work on a computer. I was like, all right, sign up. Let's do it, which was an okay class, what was the fucking... Oh, yeah, so I heard him say something. Like, I couldn't remember what... Yeah, I heard something, and I just said, yeah, do it, And he goes, okay, and he types into the computer and shit. So, like, he's like, okay, and it was like later on, he's like, we need one more class. I was like, what do I have so far? And he's like, this, and he was like, French 3. I was like, whoa, where did French 3 come from? And he was just like, oh, you said that was okay. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said something else. Oh, no, I am not taking any more French. If you look at my grades for French, I am not taking any more French. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. So he deleted that and everything. So that was the easy part, somewhat. So I look at my schedule and I see English, was it English 3? Yeah, English 3 AP and U.S. History AP. I didn't know what the fuck AP meant. I had no fucking idea. Because in North Carolina, we called them honors. I had no idea what the fuck AP meant. So I'm like, all right, taking my happy ass fucking class the next day. I get to fucking English 3 AP. Turns out AP stands for Advanced Placement. I get to fucking English Advanced Placement and like, have you ever seen a fish just trying to flop and breathe when it's like not in a tank? That was pretty much me. Cause like I couldn't keep up with this class for the fucking life of me. There was only one time in that class I got fucking lucky. We were reading within 3 weeks, because in 3 weeks I fucking got out of there, and I'll get to that. In 3 weeks, we were reading The Scarlet Letter, by Hawthorne, right? I think that's who wrote that. So, I'm just trying to keep up with this class, and I'm doing horrible, So one day the teacher's tough, tough in the sense of like, she fucking, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. She wasn't like a bitch or anything, but she was just tough, So, so one day she, I'm keeping up with the book in class and everything, and she calls on me. And I was like, oh, fuck. And it was something like, Will, why do you think she held the baby close to her like that? And I was like, because she thought that person was bad. And she was like, that's good, very good. I was like, oh, thank God. She wasn't done, though. Man, I was just like, man, you couldn't just leave it at that, could you, man? Come on, I got lucky, man. I don't know how much more lucky I'm going to get, man. And the only reason I got that is because I was using my cousin's book that had, like, notes and highlights and shit in there. So, like, I fucking read that in there. So, And she was just like, okay. So she held the baby close to him because it was evil. Where does evil come from? And I'm like, the fuck? I'm like, the, um, you know, first thing that came to my mind, I was like, the devil. And she was like, that's good. Very good. And I was just like, whew, all right, 2 for 2, She wasn't done. And she was just like, and where does the devil come from? And I was like, the Bible. And she was like, good, the Bible. Excellent. And I was just like, oh shit. Like I don't like where this is fucking going, dude. Like now I'm just like, okay, now we're getting into the Bible and shit now. Listen, I can read the fucking Scarlet Letter and tell you shit about, stuff like that, but like now you're getting into like the religious territory. And she asked me something else, and I honestly can't remember it. And I know I nailed that too. And then finally, she fucking moved on, and I was just like, "Oh, thank God," you know. But like the workload was just so much and everything. I went to my U.S. history AP class, and a week after that class, the teacher came to me and said, like, "You're not supposed to be in this class, are you?" And I was like, "Nope." And she was like, "I could tell." Not like in a malicious way, but like she was just like, I could tell. So every 3 weeks, you got a progress report. They gave you your grade and, what you need to improve on and shit. My English teacher had no fucking mercy. So like my fucking 3 week average for that class was like a 36. Because like, oh fuck, I could not keep up in that class. My average for history was fucking 86. And that's only because my teacher didn't grade me on half the shit because she knew I wasn't supposed to fucking be there. So I went home and tell my mom this. I was like, Mom, I think they got me in like advanced placement classes and shit, And she's like, really? I was like, yeah, look at my grade in English and everything. And I tell her, about history. I was like, the teacher knows I'm not supposed to be in that class and everything, And she was like, all right, I'll come to the school and talk to whoever and we'll get that fixed. I was like, right on, cool, So the next day, she comes up to the school and we're waiting. And we go see my ESM or EDM, whatever the fuck it was called. I can't remember. So we go in, and they're like, "Oh, okay, Miss Cooper, what can I do for you today?" And I'm standing like off to the distance, I'm standing like off to the right and everything. And my mom's sitting there and was just like, we had a hard time getting them transferred here, and then they put him in these advanced placement classes, and I don't know why, and he's not able to keep up with these classes and everything. So we're just here today to see if we can just switch him out of these classes and get him into the right classes and everything. My mom was real chilled and laid back with it and everything. And there's a long pause, and then my ESM just looks over at me because I believe I'm standing in the door frame. Am I? Am I standing there? Or am I sitting down? I had to be sitting down. There's no way in hell. Yeah. I think I'm sitting down. So there's like a long pause, and then she looks over at me, and then she's like, Mr. Cooper, we're in high school, and, you really shouldn't bring your mom up here to do things like this. And my mom and I just kind of just look at each other, like side to side, just like, did she really just fucking say that? Like, instead of just like, how can I help? She starts lecturing me and shit. So my mom, like, fucking now again, I didn't say a fucking word. This was my mom's fucking next move. My mom's next fucking move was just like, I'd like his withdrawal papers right now, please. And the EDM was just like, what? Like, yes, I'd like his withdrawal papers right now. If it's so much of a problem, I'll just go ahead and withdraw and we'll take him to another school. That's okay. Thank you. And no shit. The EDM or whatever was just like, okay, I'm sorry. Hold on just a moment. Clickety clack, clickety clack on the keyboard. And she was like, taken care of. I was like, really? So instead of just doing that beforehand, you decided to fucking lecture me and let it get this far. Like, my mom fucking hated that fucking school. So that got me out of that. But then the next semester, there was something else. Sorry, I just read a comment on YouTube. The next semester was something else. They were just like, well, Will, you have to take a health class. I was like, I took health in North Carolina. they're just like, well, we don't see that on your transcript. I was like, in North Carolina, our gym class was our health class. We took 3 weeks of health and then 3 weeks of gym class. We did it together. And they're like, well, we're not going to count that. I was like, okay, I don't think it's fair that I have to take the health I took in North Carolina and your health as well. I don't think that's fair. And they're like, we're sorry, that's just the way we have to do it. So, like, I breezed through that fucking class. But the other class that they gave me was speech for some reason. You know, I was like, why are they giving me a speech class? You know, but I was like, fucking whatever, just go. And this class right here was like probably one of the good things about this fucking school, because like I love this fucking class. You know? It was basically, the teacher was just like, all right, this class is simple. You come in every day, she'd have a topic on the fucking like board and shit. And it'd be like, you know, if you had only 24 hours to live, what would you do? And we'd have to write a paragraph on it in our notebook and shit. We had to do that. And then literally she would give us a topic and we'd have to write a speech on it. Like, no shit, one time she was just like, all right, you have to pick something that has opposing sides and write a speech on it. And I was just like, okay, I have a serious question. And she was like, what's that? And I was like, can I talk about pornography? And she just kind of looked at me for a second. She was like, can you keep it PG-13? I was like, absolutely. She was like, okay, go ahead. Now, I'm going to tell you right now. 90% of what I had to say in that essay was complete fabrication. I came up with it. I just fucking started making up shit. You know? And we had to give the speech in front of the class. Now, most people who went up in front of the class and gave their speech, they brought their little paper. They stood there and they're like, today I'm going to talk about this. And, you know, me, fuck that, man. I put the fucking paper to the side and I'm fucking, you know, drawing pie charts on the fucking board and shit. You know, like doing fucking parlor games and shit like that. Like, okay, who loves porn? You know, shit like that. Even the teacher was like, I do. I believe in, you know, not censoring people and shit. You know, people were into it and shit. On a possible 100, I got 110. You know, because she was just like, you didn't read the paper. You memorized everything in your fucking speech and everything like that. And I was just like, you want to know the fun part? And she was like, what? And I was just like, half of it's bullshit. She was like, I know it is, but you said it with such conviction that, you know, I couldn't take any points away. You know? So, like, I fucking love that class. You know, it was so good. I got like this, I don't remember how it happened, but like I ended up getting this reputation of being Spider-Man. Like I had the nickname of Spider-Man for a while. You know? Like I don't know how that came about, but God, how did I get that name? I don't know, but I was Spider-Man for a bit. I remember that. Then I became known for I do shit for money, which was kind of good and bad. Like oh, that's what it was. That's what it was. Okay, so like the question of the day, you know, our little paragraph that we had to write was like, what would you do for $1 million? That's what it was. Which, so our teacher asked us that. Her name was Miss Glapion. That was her name, Miss Glapion. Glapion. Fucking love this teacher. And so, you know, we're discussing the fucking what would you do for $1 million? And of course it came up, but she put it in like teacher terms. She was just like, would you sleep with a man for $1 million? And all the guys in the class were just like, ooh, no, fucking no, goo, that's gross. And then like as the sound just kind of dissipated, it got real quiet. And then you just hear, well, that's a lot of money. And that was me. Like, and then that's when it popped up. That's when I was just like, man, I'll lick this floor right now for $1. And they're just like, I have $1. I was like, oh, fucking A. So I got up on all fours, man, just licked the floor. I was like, see, joke's on you. I got fucking bus money for the ride home and shit. Which, ooh, that's something I didn't write down. Yeah, the fucking buses were like overpacked and shit, man. Yeah, that's why I started walking to school and taking the city bus and shit, man, because it was just ridiculous. Plus, you know, I don't know what it is everywhere else, but I always grew up like, okay, hey, I got to catch the bus. What bus do I catch? Hey, look for bus 213. Okay, got it. You know, hey, what bus do I got to catch? Oh, you're going to be on bus 169. Okay, cool, got it. So when I was going to take the bus here in Texas, I go to the fucking office and I was like, hey, I need to know what bus I take. And they're just like, what's your address? And I tell them my address, and they're like, okay, so you're going to go outside with all the buses, and you're going to look for the third bus. I was like, okay, just whatever. What's the number on the side of the bus? And they're just like, what do you mean? I'm like, the number on the side of the bus, like, if you just tell me what that is, I'll be able to find the bus easier. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, the buses have a number on them. What's the number on the bus? And then I can find that easier instead of you just telling me to pick the third bus out of a lineup and shit. And they're just like, we don't do that here. And I was like, okay, never mind. And I just started taking the city bus home and walking home and shit because it was the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard of. Oh, and another speech class story. So here was something that we had to do. Our teacher said, you have to make an invention. It can be anything you want, So here's what happened. So we get into this group, and they're like, okay, what if we make a remote that can pause, stop, and rewind time? And we're like, fucking A. Here was the thing, though. So we came up with all this shit, and the teacher said, okay, somebody has to, present it. Like, cool and shit like that. So, like, we're coming up with all this shit, like, it does this, and like, we can do in the presentation, we can do this, and we can do that, all this shit. We get up in front of the class, and nobody had anything prepared. Like, I'm assuming they done it. Like, they got this shit prepared. And I just look at them. I'm like, y'all didn't write anything down? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, my God. So, like, I literally just stand there and I'm just like, okay, so has there ever been a moment in your time of life that you want to stop? And, like, I literally had to pull a whole fucking presentation out of my ass, like, on the spot, and it was fucking brilliant because I got like a 92 on that fucking report. I don't know why we lost 8 points, but, but I love that fucking class. I would go in there and visit, like, in between classes and shit. Another class, oh, check this out, though. This is a story I don't think I've told, like, either on YouTube or, on the podcast or anything. But here's something new. I had to take what they called, what was it called? Teen education? Is that what it was called? Or teen development? I can't remember what it was called, but it was essentially a fucking home ec class without cooking. I mean, that's essentially what it was. You learned about, oh God, what did you learn about? Like, basically I had to take care of a home and all this shit. Well, one of the things that they had you do for one of the projects was you go down to the local daycare and participate with some of the kids. Well, in order to do that, you have to get what is known as a TB test or a tuberculosis test. Well, apparently I was sick and I did not get the tuberculosis test. So I had to make up these days, which was, how many hours did I have to make up? 4, 5. I think I had to make up 9 hours. 8 hours. That's what it was. 8 hours. So I get the TB test. I do that. It comes back negative. And I go down to the daycare. Now, I want y'all to think about that. My fucking ass having to watch a bunch of children. It's one thing when I have to watch one child. Okay, but here I am having to watch a bunch of them. Okay? So I come down to the fucking daycare. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, you're here for? I'm just like, oh, I'm here to volunteer for this class. And they're just like, oh, okay, we'll sign in here and everything. And come on over, just hang out with some of the kids and everything. I was like, okay, cool. Some of it was, fairly simple. I'll never forget this one thing. Like, I was sitting at a table with the kids, and the kids were just like, oh, okay, so what do you do at the school and everything? Do you play sports? I'm like, fuck yeah, man. I fucking run track, I didn't say that. So I'm sitting there, and this kid is just like, can you help me with my homework? I was like, absolutely. What do you got, man? And he's just like, I need to write something about Martin Luther King. Kid's in like 4th or 5th grade. It had to be 4th. It couldn't have been 5th. He'd been too old. So I was like, okay. right then my fucking brain switches off because I totally forgot where I was. I start dropping fucking science. Like Martin Luther King was a revolutionary in the civil rights movement and everything when he marched in Montgomery, Alabama and everything. Just started just dropping science and everything. This kid's just looking at me with a blank stare like, I don't know any of these words that you're saying. You lost me after Martin Luther King. And I was just like, oh, damn, that's right. You're like fucking 7. Like, I gotta clean this shit up for you a little bit, So, and another one was I was helping a kid with their math homework. It's like fucking 3rd grade math, so that I can do quite easily. And so this kid's like, all right, I need help with 9 plus 3. I was like, all right, I'm gonna show you a cool little trick with 9s. You ready? He's like, okay. I was like, 9 plus 3. All right. So what's the number before 3? And he's like, 4. And I'm like, no. That comes after. What comes before it? And he's like, 1. I was like, you went too far. Okay. What's the number before 3? And he's like, 2. I was like, okay, now put a 1 next to it. What do you got? And he's like, 12. I was like, there you go. There's your answer. And he's like, okay, but what about this one? I'm like, all right, 9 plus 6. Okay, so let's do it the same way. What's the number before 5? Or what's the number before 6? He's like, 7. I'm like, no. That's after. What's the number before 6? 4. Okay, dude. Come on. Work with me here. All right? What's the number before 6? He's like, 5. I'm like, put a 1 next to it. What do you got? 15. There you go. All right, one more. All right, 9 plus 7. All right, what's the number before 7? He's like, 8. I was like, that's when I backhanded him, and I had to leave for the day. I was asked to never come back, because I was like, all right, that's it. There's only so much I can take, So daycare, tuberculosis. Hold on, I'm looking at my notes here. Okay, so let me talk about. Oh, you know what? I skipped this part. Let me go all the way back. So let's go back to the beginning because I forgot about this. All right. So also, when I went to the school, now obviously schools have rules. Okay, schools have rules. When I get to this school, they're like, okay, you have to wear an ID badge. I was like, what do you mean wear it? They're like, okay, like we give you an ID badge and you wear it like on a lanyard around your neck and everything. And I was just like, okay, can I ask what the purpose is? Because in North Carolina, we had student IDs, but it was more like a novelty thing. It was more like, here's a student ID. And we're like, cool, look at that shit. And we put it in our pocket and more than likely we fucking forget about it. Here, it was like, here's a student ID. You better not fucking lose this motherfucker. So I asked what I thought was a very valid question. 2 valid questions. The first one was like, okay, why do we have to wear them? I'm just curious. And they're like, well, we ask students to wear a student ID because if somebody walks into the school willing to harm one of y'all and they're not wearing the ID, we can catch them. And I'm nodding. And I'm like, okay, counterpoint, what if I walk into the school willing to harm somebody wearing the ID? What do we do? And they didn't have an answer for it. And, and they're just like, well, they just kind of just brushed it off. And I was like, okay. Another rule this fucking school had was you weren't allowed to be fucking, like, shaven and shit. I mean, not shaven, but, like, you weren't allowed to be bushy. You're maybe allowed to have, like, a little 5 o'clock shadow, but after that, that's when they were just like, you better go fucking shave. And again, I asked what I thought was a valid question. I was like, okay, why do we have to constantly shave? And they gave me the same fucking answer. It was just like, well, Will, if somebody comes in here willing to harm one of y'all and they have a beard, we can stop them. And I'm like, what if I come in here clean shaven and want to harm somebody? How do you stop me? And they didn't have a fucking answer. This school was fucking bonkers, dude. So the next year, they really fucking amped it up a notch. I mean, they really brought the hammer down. So the next year, they're just like, you have to be wearing a belt. Like, that's it. Shirts have to be tucked in. And I'm just like, okay, I fucking guess, you know? So, first day of fucking school. First fucking day, you know? I was well, I'm still big, but like in high school, I was bigger, you know? So, I would wear like a t-shirt and then I would wear like a fucking Hawaiian shirt like over it, you know? Kind of like, give the illusion that, I'm not as big as I am and shit. So I would tuck the t-shirt into my fucking pants, but leave the Hawaiian shirt out, you know? First day of fucking school. In order to even get your fucking schedule, this is my senior year. In order to get your fucking schedule, you had to be in dress code. So I come up, they look me up and down, I'm shaving and shit, you know? And they're just like, is your shirt tucked in? And I open my fucking Hawaiian shirt, and I'm like, yes. I wasn't wearing a belt. I was unaware of the new belt thing. So they're just like, oh, you're not wearing a belt. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm like, what the fuck? I was fucking mystified. Instead of just saying, wear a belt tomorrow, here's your fucking schedule, they're just like, fuck it, get out of here. I was dumbfounded, man. This fucking school. And then here's the fucking coup de grace to it. So, one day, this is like fucking, this had to be months into the fucking school year. I'm fucking doing something for drama right before I left that class, you know? So I'm coming back from doing it. I'm heading back towards the drama room. Our principal, of all fucking people, our principal catches me in the hallway. And he's like, hey, you? I was like, hey, Mr. Reynolds, And he's like, come with me. And I'm like, all right. Like, I'm kind of doing something, but all right. So I follow him into, like, this office area. And he's like, who's your EDM or SM, whatever the fuck they're called. And I was just like, well, them. He's like, come with me. And I'm like, okay. Like, what are we doing? Like, I have no idea what the fuck's going on. He just caught me in the hallway randomly. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And he goes to my EDM and he puts me in the door frame. And he's like, hey, I need you to write him up. I'm like, whoa, for what? I was just walking down the hallway. But this is profiling. Like, I was like, what did I do? He was like, your shirt's not tucked in. I'm like, yes, it is. He's like, but not the Hawaiian shirt. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? I didn't say fucking, but I was like, are you kidding me? Like, he was like, well, why are you wearing that? I was like, oh, because I'm this thing called fat. That I did say. I was like, I'm this thing called fat. And he was just like, well, you can't wear it like that. I was like, oh my God. I was like, fine, write me up for it. I was just, this fucking school. I hated it. So, now let's skip back ahead to intro the business. Why they put me in this class, I'll never fucking know. I guess it was just one of those classes that are like, well, fuck, you need something. He was signing. Just found out the old principal is signing people up at a gym. Yeah, that's funny. All right, so I'm in intro to business, and like, I met some good people in there. Like, I met at one time who was my best friend. I don't know what happened, but the only story that I can really tell that like I think is really noteworthy is that we, on the final day, we had to take finals and everything. For some reason, man, our teacher was like fucking more business than usual, man. Like, he was just like, all right, here's your test. I don't want y'all to fucking say anything. I don't want y'all to do anything. I don't want y'all passing anything. Nothing. Just take this test and that's it. And we're just like, all right, what the fuck is going on with him today? So anyway, I'm taking the test, We're all taking the test. I turn my test in. I'm done. All right. My best friend at the time, her name was Gabby. Gabby, she turns her test in. And we're sitting there, And she kind of gives me this look. Now, everybody knew for some reason. People I didn't even fucking know knew I had fucking gum. I had like a $10 a week habit in fucking gum. Because I always had fucking gum. Like, people I didn't even fucking know. They come to me like, hey, can I get a piece of gum? I'm like, how do you know I have gum? They're like, because I know. And I'm like, man, fuck here. So, Gabby kind of gave me this look like, hey, can I have some gum? Like, she kind of gave me that look like, can I have gum? She didn't say anything, but like, I could tell by her look that, we were really good friends at the time, but she gave me that look like, can I have gum? So I was like, I nodded. So like, I pull out a piece of fucking gum and I just hand her the gum. You know, we're right in front of the teacher's desk, mind you. So I hand her the gum, and like my teacher just kind of looks at me like I fucking just traded Russian war secrets. You know, like he just looked at me like what the fuck did you just do? And I just put my hands up like, fuck, you know. He takes out my test and writes a 0 on it. I was like, are you fucking kidding? I was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, man. You know? So now I'm fucking pissed, right? So now I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Gabby and I was just like, you know what? I hate to do it to her, but I'm taking her down with me. I'm sitting there like, what am I going to do to get her in trouble to where she's going to get the 0 too? You know? And I'm about to like flick a piece of paper at her to make her like say something because like he said no talking and shit. So like I knew if I flicked this piece of paper at her, she's going to turn around and be like, what? You know, and then he'd see that, boom, there's a 0 for her. And they're like, fuck, there. I've taken somebody else down with me. Right before I'm about to flick this fucking piece of paper, the guy that's in front of her did something. I don't remember what the fuck it was. But like he did something to where he was just like, hey, and he took his test down, wrote a 0 on it, and called it a day. I was like, you know what? I'll take that. Somebody else is going down with me. Fuck it. So class is nearing the end and everything, so I'm pissed off because now I got a 0 on a fucking final. But like my grade in the fucking, I could have stabbed somebody in that class and I probably could have still passed, So I'm about to leave and he's like, no, you and you stay after. I was like, God dang it, So he's like, listen, I'm gonna grade your test and just take 10 points off, okay? I was like, all right, fine, whatever, because I'm pissed now, So I was like, fine, whatever. I got an 86 on that fucking test. I would have had a 90 fucking 6 on that test. I was so mad about that, you know. And Intro to Business was another class that were like, they had us do group projects, and it was one of those ones where like nobody wanted to fucking talk in front of the class, and I didn't want to do work. So like it was a great, pass off. All I had to do was just say, hey, you guys do the work, I'll fucking talk. And they're like, oh, that's great, So, like, I would just have, like, 3 people just standing there silent while I'm just fucking, doing my little fucking song and dance and everything. Now, I did have a couple classes that were problematic. By which I mean, like, I just didn't get the fucking subject matter. And one of those classes was fucking geometry. I just did not get it. No matter what you fucking drilled in my head about geometry, I just never fucking got it. Because it'd be like, okay, this is how you do this problem. And I'm like, cool, I got it. And then on the next problem, you do it the exact same way as that one. And it's like, no, you don't do it like this for that. And it's like, fucking A, man. So they eventually said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Will, you're obviously not fucking getting it. So we're going to give you a computer course. Because our school was kind of technologically advanced a little bit. So I was like, okay, that, that might actually work out. So I take the computer course, and I did okay, but they're still like, okay, you know what? We think you need to take the after school one. And I was like, fuck. I hate this place as it is. I don't want to stay after school and do it, So I did it. And they're like, plus, Will, you can sign in at home and do this if you like. And I was like, oh, okay, bet. All right, let's do that, too. So I would do it after school. And then, I would do it at home, just to get it done and everything. Because all they told me was, like, hey, you're going to take a computer course. You have to finish these courses on the computer and everything. I was like, cool, dope. I finished it. I finished all the courses on there. I was like, dope and everything. I stopped showing up to the after school class. I was like, okay, fine. I'm fucking done. We're nearing the end of the school year, mind you. So I'm walking out of my fucking one class one day, and it's right next to the fucking teacher that I went to after school. And she's like, Will, why did you stop coming to class? And I was like, well, I'm done. I just assumed I didn't need to still show up if I'm done. She was like, what do you mean you're done? I was like, I finished all the computer stuff. She was like, what about the paper stuff? And I'm like, I'm just looking at her. I looked at her like she said, I'm going to drop my nutsack in your mouth. Like, what do you mean paper stuff? She's like, there's a paper packet that you have to complete too. And I was like, I was never told about that. I was just told I got to do a computer course. And she was just like, well, that doesn't mean you don't get to do it. I was just like, well, it's kind of hard for me to do it if I was never told it. Meanwhile, we're screaming at each other in the middle of the hallway, because this teacher was a bitch. You know, I used to act like I didn't know who she was when she used to come in the Blockbuster. She'd come in and be like, oh, hey, Will, how's it going? I'm like, do I know you? I knew exactly who the fuck she was, you know? Um, so I was like, all right, that's it. So I went down to now we had like ESMs or EDMs, whatever and shit. But then there was like the head EDM, like if you had a problem with the EDM, you went to like the head EDM and shit. So I went down to her office. Shit's about to get real. All right. So I go down to her office. I knock on the door. I walk in, and she was like, "What seems to be the problem today?" And I tell her what's going on. I was like, "Listen, y'all told me I had to take a computer class for this, geometry that I'm sucking ass at. I didn't say sucking ass, but and then all of a sudden, I finished the course and everything, and y'all are telling me that I have like a thick, packet of paper that I got to do and everything. This was never explained to me. Y'all told me I need to take a computer course, so I just assumed that once I did the computer course, I'm done." She sat there and nodded for a second. And then she was just like, "Well, Will, what else did you assume was going to happen?" I was like, "I told you. I assumed that once you did the computer course, that's it. We're done. That's what y'all wanted me to do." And she was like, "Will, what happens when you assume?" That's when my eyes just got big. I was just like, if you say make an ass out of you and me, we're going to have a problem. And she was like, well, what happens when we assume? Now, meanwhile, this is like 2.5 weeks out from graduation. It couldn't have been more than 3 weeks out from graduation. So, I'm in danger of fucking, not graduating because of fucking geometry at this point. And another class that I'll get to. And she was like, well, what happens when we assume? I was like, you know what? I want to transfer down to Scarborough. Scarborough was like the school that was down from us, like down the street from us. I was like, I want all my credits transferred to there, and I want my withdrawal from here right now. And her jaw just kind of opened and was just like, Mr. Cooper, there's 2 weeks left of the school year. And that's when I came back and said, I didn't ask how much time was left. I said, I want my credits transferred down to Scarborough, and I'd like my withdrawal papers right now. And she was just like, well, Will, I was just saying that when you assume certain things, I was just like, okay, you know what? The hell with this. That I did say. I was like, the hell with this. I don't need this. And I fucking walked out of the office. And she's trying to call me back. Mr. Cooper, come back. And I just fucking walked out because I was just like, you got to be fucking kidding me, man. Like, they don't tell me the proper shit that I need to do and then get mad at me that it's not done. Long story short on that, too late. I had to take what was known as an efficiency test in order to pass that fucking class. They just give you like a fucking, basically 100 question test. Here, you pass this, you pass that. I was like, dope. All right. Another class I had a problem with was economics. And it's not because I didn't get it. Me and the teacher just did not fucking get along. This teacher fucking hated me for some reason, and I don't understand why. And I tried my best in this fucking class. I will say there were some things that I was just like, I don't get this. The fucking breaking point one day for me was, now, before I even tell y'all this story, I want y'all to know that fucking my economics teacher was fucking white. All right, that is very fucking important to this story. So I'm in class one day, and again, tension's fucking high between me and this teacher and shit. Now, much like some teachers in this school, they give you a syllabus at the beginning of the year that says, this is what we're going to learn. This is how shit in my class works. This is how you're going to do it. Da 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 da. All this shit, right? So I happen to still had this at week 7 of whatever semester we're in and shit, So, I get a quiz back that said 70. Now, for me, 70 is pretty good because that means, A, I passed. Barely, but I passed. So I'm like, fucking A, man, I passed. But then it said minus 10, 60. I'm like, what the fuck? And it said no last name on the paper. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Because I used to always put William C on my fucking, well, like when I wrote my name. Like every class I'm in, I wrote William C. You know? So I'm like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? I was like, it's okay. Just stay calm. You know, so I get the quiz. I get the syllabus. You know, I calmly walk over to the desk. You know? And bitch's name was Miss Andrews. And I said, Miss Andrews? And she says, yes. I was like, if I could just talk to you for a second. You gave me the 10 points off here, but in your syllabus, it doesn't say anything about removing points for this. You know, and I was very calm. You know? And she was like, I've told you to write your name on the paper, though. I was like, I'd understand if you had two Williams in your class, but there's only one, you know? And she was just like, but you could just write your name, Will. I was like, I could understand if I wrote like an entirely different name, like Charlie Brown. But William C., I mean, that's me, you know? And she was just like, you need to stop causing a disturbance. I'm like, what the fuck? You know, she was like, I'm not changing the grade. And then this kind of just slipped out of me at this point. I didn't mean to say this, but I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I didn't mean to say it, but I did. I was like, well, this is bullshit. And she was like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I was like, okay. So I walked back to my desk and I was like, all right, I'll take the fucking 60 in stride. You know, whatever, fine. So I sit down, and again, she was like, if you want to cause a disruption, you can leave. You know, I didn't say a fucking word. I was just like, and I said it very calmly. You know, I was like, I'm not causing a disruption. I was just merely playing my, shut up! That's when I fucking snapped. I don't know why this next sentence came out of my fucking mouth, but it did. And that was like, hey, you're not going to talk to me like I'm some cracker. Again, she was white. All right, I don't know why that sentence came out of me, you know. But I was like, hey, you're not going to talk to me like some cracker. And she was like, get out. I was like, gladly. You know, I packed up my shit. Even the kids in the fucking classroom, they're just like, Will, it's 15 minutes before the bell. I was like, I don't care. It was my last class of the day. I was like, I don't care. Fuck this, man. And I took my shit and left. Because, like, I fucking hated that. So, tension's tight between me and this teacher, right? In order to pass this class, I needed a great grade on my final paper, and I needed to pass the final with a 70 or above. So the paper was simple, because like everybody was like adding bullshit to their paper that they didn't need and everything, and she didn't want bullshit. She just wanted, this is what I did, and that's what I did. I was like, this is what I did, you know. So I would have had a higher score on the paper, but I was like a day late with it. But so I was like, all right, I got the good grade on the paper. Now I just need to pass the final with 70 or above. If I can get a 70 or above, I'm good. And you'll never fucking convince me to this day that she didn't do this on purpose. I get the final back and I got a 69. I was like, you'll never fucking convince me she didn't do that on purpose. You know, so in order to pass economics as well, I had to take another efficiency test, which was another 100 question packet. Of just like, if you pass this, you pass the class. You know? I'm coughing. And the final class I want to talk about. So I took chemistry, which to this day, I don't understand how chemistry is a fucking science credit. I don't understand it. It's more math than it is science. At least in a classroom setting, maybe like in a lab setting, there's chemicals and, you know, like when I hear chemistry, I want to hear shit like chemicals, ointment, you know, like that's the shit I want to hear. I don't want to hear, you know, a squared plus x3, you know, like I don't want to hear that fucking bullshit, you know. But here was the good thing with this. Well, kind of good. We had a teacher that I don't remember her name. God bless her. But for some reason, she had some personal issues going on in her life. And for some reason, out of, I don't know, let's just say 30 weeks, how many weeks are you usually in school? You know, let's just say you're in school 20 weeks. Okay? Out of those 20 weeks, she was probably there 2. And I'm not exaggerating. So we had a fucking substitute every other day. You know? So, and 4 out of 5 substitutes were just like, I'm just fucking here. Do whatever the fuck you want. So, our teacher had poker chips on her table. Apparently, she would use them later in the year to demonstrate molecular structure or whatever, or atoms, or I don't know, some shit. So I would bring a deck of cards, and me, my friend Ryan, and like a few other people, we would just start playing poker in class. We did it like every fucking day. Every now and then we get that substitute that's just like, hey, you're going to do this worksheet. So then we just wait for like the smartest one to do the worksheet, and then we'd all copy it, and then, we'd go back to playing poker. So finally the end of the year is coming. And the teacher was finally showing up on a more regular basis again. And it got down to the final. Now, we got our averages for this class, and like they were horrendous because the teacher wasn't fucking there. So like I seriously had a fucking, I think an 18, I think my friend Ryan had like a 26. I'm like, these are the grades that we have to suck dick to get out of. And they're just like, Will, that's gross. I was like, at this point, if they came to me and said you have to suck dick to pass chemistry, I'd fucking entertain the idea. Will, you're gross. And I was like, whatever. Don't act like you wouldn't. So it came down to the final where she was just like, all right, if you pass the final, you pass the class. So we're like, okay, cool, So we all take the final and everything. I go back like, what was it, the next day, I think. I go back to the next day, and I was just like, hey, what did I get on the final? And she was like, 68. I was like, damn it! She was like, don't worry, everybody passed. I was like, oh, really? She was like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, cool, awesome. And I think I went through everything except for, I'm making sure I hit all my notes here. Okay, so graduation. Here's something that like I never really fucking talked about. So graduation, for anybody who's ever fucking graduated, I mean, like we had a fucking rehearsal for this, and it was, I'm sorry, but I think graduation rehearsal is like the dumbest fucking thing ever created. It's like you're practicing the walk in a line, I thought it was the dumbest fucking thing. And like, fun fact, I didn't even want to fucking go to my graduation. I was fucking forced to go by my mom, because like, I think according to her, it was just like, I had to force you to go to school some days, and I'm pretty sure you would have dropped out if given the option. So fucking, you're going to your graduation because I want to see it. And I was just like, fine, fuck. I didn't even want to fucking go. I thought the rehearsal was stupid, and like even the fucking graduation had fucking rules, man. They're just like, okay, if you fucking do something wrong walking across that stage, there will be somebody there to escort you away. And they were not fucking joking. There was somebody parked at the end of the fucking ramp, to make sure fucking, like, if we did something, like, if we, like, crip walked across the stage and shit, they would escort you out and shit, Which I'm just like, really? It's our fucking graduation, and you're still fucking, ruling over us like Nazi Germany? Like, dude, man. So, anyway, I do the fucking graduation thing, and, fun fact, I don't have a diploma. I mean, like, I graduated, but, I mean, physically, I don't have a fucking diploma. Because, like, there's so many students in the class that they didn't have time to print them out. And then I went back to go get it, and they're like, oh, you're missing a book. I was like, what do you mean I'm missing a book? You're missing an English 3 book. And I was just like, okay. So I had to search the entire book room for it. Wasn't there. So they're like, okay, you can pay for the book. I'm like, all right, how much is it? They're like, $65. I was like, I'll see y'all in another life. And so fun fact, I don't have my fucking diploma. I mean, I physically graduated. I mean, legally I can say like, hey, I graduated high school, but I don't have the diploma to say it. And nor do I really fucking care. Because like, I got to do a lot of cool shit in this school. I got to do that talent show, which was a great fucking feeling. I mean, when you control 800 people in the fucking palm of your hand, it's a fucking great feeling. If it wasn't for that school, I wouldn't have been able to say that I was in that fucking Super Bowl halftime show. You know, I got to meet some pretty cool people. I mean, like Erica and Jackie and a few others. I mean, there's only a handful of people I still talk to from that fucking school. There's not a lot. You know, I can probably count on probably two hands, like how many people I still keep in contact with. And not even on like a regular basis. Like some of them are just like every now and then I say happy birthday. Like my friend Luana. I fucking love her to death. But like it usually just, hey, happy birthday. How you doing? You good? Cool. Awesome. You know? Um, but I hated that place with immense, immense passion. Um, it just, I thought some of the shit that they did was just outlandish. I think some of the rules they came up with were just, and again, I'm not saying like let the inmates run the fucking asylum. I'm not saying that at all. You know, I'm just saying like some of the shit you did, you know, it didn't need to be the way it was. You know, like I never saw the point in the whole shaving thing. You know, like sending motherfuckers home because they didn't shave just didn't make any fucking sense to me. You know, sending people home because they're not wearing a belt didn't make sense to me. Sending 2,500 kids to lunch at the exact same time didn't make sense to me. You know, at one time we had A Day, B Day, which was on A Day you went to these classes. On B Day you went to the other set of classes. And then you did that, you know, back and forth, back and forth. Thankfully they got rid of that bullshit because that shit was fucking stupid and I hated it. You know? But I mean, there were some good that came out of that school, but like, gosh, if anybody listening to this had the displeasure of having to go to Eisenhower High School in Houston, Texas, just know that I fucking feel for you. And you know, oh, you know, plus the school is so fucking big. You know, and then they don't even think about that. They're like, okay, we're going to put your first period class in the 100 hall and your second period class in 800. Have fun. Like, okay, fuck. And now I got to barrel through 2,000 kids to make it to the fucking 800 hall within 3.5 minutes. Awesome. Fantastic. You know, this should be fun. You know, and it was just ridiculous. You know, I've never hated a physical place as much as I hated that fucking school. You know, and I thought my school in North Carolina was bad, but that was mainly the people I hated. You know? And don't get me wrong, some of the people here, like my ESM, if I saw her walking on the street today, I'd probably run her over with a fucking car. You know, same with the principal. The principal's fucking stupid too. You know? So yeah, there you go. That's the those are the stories you didn't ask for this week, all about my high school and Texas there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's episode of Stories No One Asked for the podcast. These episodes have been coming out a little bit more irregularly because stories are running thin, and plus I'm kind of working on a little side project. So just keep that in mind, and thank you for your patience. So until next time, I should say, not next week. Until next time, I'm the Artist Version 1, and remember, be breezy.